right. So today we're doing another Q&A here on YouTube exclusive only. I'm not sharing this on my podcast. If you guys want other cultural issues, you can listen to the Her Faith Inspires podcast anywhere podcasts are found. But these are questions that you guys send in and I answer them to the best of my ability, always aligned to biblical truth. So that's what I do. So hopefully you're here to hear these questions answered according to a biblical worldview. It's not my opinion. If it is my opinion, I would tell you and just be like, hey, according to the wisdom that I feel that I receive from wise counsel and life, being a wife, a mom, and just a woman living in this current culture, this is the way that I would answer the question. But most of the time, all the time, I'm going to try to align it to biblical truth. So we have three questions coming in today that are mostly related to parenting and how to parent in the 21st century, which is what I'm currently doing. And who can say, I mean, I think we can all say that things are a lot different now compared to when we were raised. And it's weird how things can change so fast. So the first question that I'm going to answer today is from a listener who wrote in, how do I navigate my teens and the dating relationship? I'm trying to decide what is too young to be in a romantic relationship. This is a great question because I don't think parents think too often about dating, talking to their kids about dating, the standards that they should set when dating, and even what is a good age that kids are mature enough to handle. And as you said in this question, a romantic relationship. I mean, just think about that word romantic relationship. Can a teenager handle romantic relationships? So we need to discuss that. That's part of using wisdom as parents and guiding our kids. Now, are they going to want to date? Yeah, but that's not the question, right? The question isn't what do I do if my kids want to date? The question is how do we help them navigate dating? So I'm going to tell you this from a parent's perspective because the Bible doesn't lay out, hey, parents, have your kids date at the age of 18. It doesn't say that. The Bible doesn't, this is where it requires wisdom. And we can glean that from biblical wisdom and from wise counsel of other parents who have had these experiences. So, my first question to all parents is to ask this question: what is the purpose of dating? What's the purpose? Is it to have a good time? Is it so your kid can be happy and, look for somebody to go have fun with on some dates? No, the purpose of dating is to marry. And I know in our culture, we don't look at it that way because we have a hookup culture. We have kids who just go out and they party and I don't know if they even think of standards in dating, but the purpose of dating is to get married. You're trying to find that person that you're compatible with, that you can do the rest of your life with. So those are bringing values back into this whole question of dating, which is bringing values into marriage, right? We should think about that with I guess, the unsuccessful marriage rate and the high divorce rate in our country. I think we've lost sight of looking at the purpose of dating, which leads to marriage, and thinking ahead and being patient in that process. So that's what I've asked my boys whenever they're talking about dating. I say, what's the purpose of dating? It's to get married. So I used to think 16 was a good age when they were like 6, oh yeah, wait till you're 16. So that was the standard for all of my boys. I have 3 of them. I would say you can't date till you're 16 years old. Now, my oldest is 21, my middle is 19, my youngest is 14, so we're not there yet, but I've actually raised that age. So my 14-year-old, I'm like, sorry, you can't date at 16. It's too young, and he understands because he has 2 older brothers. And my older boys did not date at 16 anyways. They knew they could, but we talked about the standards of dating, so they didn't find anybody that they wanted to date. Now, they had prom dates and like winter formal dates, but actually a girlfriend at 16, we didn't experience that, so we didn't have to worry about it. My 19-year-old now has a girlfriend, and I suspect it's going to be his only one because, it looks like they have a solid relationship where they talk about possibly getting married. So because he waited so long to have a girlfriend at 19, he had standards, and we talked to him about those standards it was easier for him to say, okay, this girl meets the standards, and I'm like 19 years old now. So anyways, my whole point in that is saying I used to think 16 was an age of maturity. My mom had set the age of 16 for me when I was a kid. And I didn't have my first boyfriend until I was 17, a senior in high school. And even then I was like, looking back, I was not in any position to think about a husband. I was in high school. I was worried about chemistry class and what college I was going to go to afterwards. So um, I don't know that an age is like, here is the age that you should allow your kids to date. All I can say is, as a mom of a 21-year-old, a 19-year-old, and a 14-year-old, I think 16, if the purpose of dating is for marriage, I think 16 for a lot of kids is still too young. So I'm not opposed to kids marrying young, especially Christian kids, because you want them to have values. Again, we're talking about values in their relationships that sets them up for a successful marriage. That's what we want to do as parents. We want to make sure that they have these standards that align to values that set them up for a successful marriage, because anybody can tell you it's okay to get a divorce, blah, blah, blah. I've talked about that before, but the repercussions of divorce are very real. The consequences of divorce are very real because it's tearing families apart. And there's lots of consequences that show negative effects for kids. So we're not here to talk about that. But what we want to do is say the standards of dating set my child up for a successful marriage because there's values within those standards. So again, I'm not opposed to kids marrying young. I actually think that they need to. I think if you're going to struggle together financially, then struggle with a partner who you guys can hope together, you can dream together, you can rough it together. It's okay to do that. It's okay not to have the fancy house and this mortgage payment, because that's a whole other stressor in itself for a young married couple. It's okay for them to rent together and then to buy together and build together and dream together. Actually, that's what brings the bond, as they take a single person and another single person and come together and say, now we walk with each other in this life and we'll dream together and we'll make those dreams come true together. It's a very beautiful thing, contrary to what people in this culture would say as far as your independence and you can do it by yourself. So let's go back to the standards. First, talk about the purpose with your kids. Let them know the purpose of dating is to find a spouse, to find that future wife, to find that future husband. Because another thing parents don't talk about with their kids is the fact that, and I wasn't told this when I was growing up, they say, my parents, I was the part of the purity culture, which I'm not bitter about. I mean, I was okay with being told that your virginity, your body, your self-confidence, and your self-respect is something that you should protect, and you should save yourself for marriage. So I don't think that, I'm not bitter about that. But when kids marry young, they're able to be more successful in that area. But if they're not, it comes with baggage too. So the first thing we should do is say this: the purpose of dating is for marriage because you're going to want to have sex. You're a human being, and that's just a natural part of being a human. And if we don't tell our kids that, we're lying to them, and they're going to think, oh, I have this one special person that God's created for me, and I'm only going to want that one special person. That's just not true. You can fall in love with more than one person. So you have to guard your heart, right? That's what the Bible says. So to date young is hard to guard your heart. It's hard to keep yourself pure because of just the way that we are wired. And it's not a bad thing. It's true. So that brings me to standards for dating. The purpose of dating is for marriage. And then when you start to date, you have standards. What is the standard? Well, you teach your kids what to look for. We know if you're a Christian person and you want to share those values with somebody to be equally yoked, you won't be unequally yoked. You want to find a person who's walking in unity with you, because that's what a true partnership looks like. That's what dreaming together looks like, and building together and planning together and building a family together looks like. Otherwise, you're not equally yoked and you will be going in different directions, and it won't set you up for a good marriage. So we need to talk about the standards for dating. The standards are that this is what you want. You want somebody who is walking with the Lord. My boys told me that when they go to one of their college classes, that the leader will say, don't just say, are you a Christian? Because that's easy for people to say, oh, yeah, I am. You say, what does your walk with the Lord look like? So teach your kids to ask those questions as well. Like, what does your walk with the Lord look like? What does your relationship with God entail? Going to church and your spiritual disciplines and things to make sure that they truly are who they say that they are. So when they begin to date, then there's a whole other set of standards, right? Like I talk to my 19-year-old now about when he dates, be careful what situation you put yourself into, because you're going to want to, if you are attracted to that person, you're just going to have those natural desires. It doesn't make you a bad person. It makes it real. This is real. So it's real conversations. I've opened up those doors of communication with my kids from a very young age because I didn't talk that freely with my own parents. And I wish that they would have spoken more freely about it and told me, like, yeah, there's going to be temptations there because you're human. Just because you're Christian doesn't mean it removes all of those human tendencies and characteristics and temptations. Set your kids up to understand that there will be challenges to with dating. So you set the standards for the person and then you talk to them about how to be successful in that dating relationship. Hold yourself accountable. Don't put yourself in situations where you'll fail. Know what conversations to have with that person. How long will you date before you realize if that's the person you want to marry or not? Why waste time building baggage and carrying baggage into the next relationship if that's not the one that you want to be with? So I think at 16, at teenage years, encourage friendships and even then tell them how to look for good friends. Because if they can discern good, strong friendships, they'll be able to discern a good, strong date partner and eventually spouse when they get married. So I think the three main factors of having these conversations is what's the purpose of dating? That's going to help you know if your child's ready to date or not. If the purpose of dating is to find a spouse that you can do life with that shares the same values as you, then you'll know, okay, my kid's a junior in high school. They're not looking for marriage yet. They need to just finish their high school years. And then when they graduate from high school, then start talking to them. If they go to college, chances are they're going to find a spouse in college because they're getting to be that age and they're around groups of people. So what's the purpose of dating? Helps you with your, at the age that you're going to allow your child to date. What's the standard for somebody to date? That's going to eliminate a lot of people, except those people that meet the standard, that meet the requirement of sharing those values with you. And third, once you do start dating, what are the rules for your dating life? What are you going to do to make sure that you protect yourself even in that? And then finally, I have a podcast that I did last year that's titled Project or Partner. Like you can have a project and date somebody who has all this baggage, who doesn't share the same values, and hope that they'll, please God, let this be the one, I'll fix him. It never works. That's a project. Do you want a project or do you want a partner? So I'll link that episode in the description. Hopefully I'll remember. I always say I'm going to link an episode in the description and then I forget. But if I forget and it's not in there right now because you're listening to this, then go to my website and look for project or partner. But I'm going to do my best to remember. So that's how I would answer that. That's how I do that as a parent. Secondly, how can I know God's will for my life? Is it easy as, oh, just following the biblical principles? Or should I be waiting on some sort of confirmation for each decision of my life? If you wait for a conversation or confirmation for each decision of your life, good Lord, you're going to never make a decision because we don't always get confirmation for every decision of our lives. And I've talked about this before on the first Q&A from about a month ago. I'll try to link that in the show notes too. And so you can go back and listen to that because a good deal of how we guide our lives will be based on biblical principles. I mean, Proverbs is a book of principles. They're not promises. So Proverbs says, if you apply these principles to your life, you're setting yourself up for greater success. Tells you how to have successful relationships, friendships, tells you how to discern between right and wrong, good and bad, what to pursue, being a person who's willing to be coachable and learn and not be like, no, I know everything. So if you set those principles in your life and you live by them and be a wise and faithful steward over all that God has entrusted you with, like your finances and your home and your marriage and those things, then sure, you're going to reap what you sow, right? You're going to get into it or get out of it what you've put into it. That's just the natural law of cause and effect at work as we live according to wisdom. However, it sometimes is easy as following biblical principles, but it depends upon what you're talking about. It depends upon the decisions that you make. Some are wisdom issues. Some are wisdom decisions, and it requires maybe some wise counsel. Proverbs also mentions how you should seek out wise counsel. So you have to be careful. If there's wise counsel, it means there's also foolish counsel. So there are some things in life that we have to maybe go find an answer. We have to seek the truth. The Bible says, if you, on the day that you seek me, I'll be found by you. So God requires us also to go seek out the best possible answer, to make the best possible decision. So I think that this one's, it's not an either or. It's not like biblical principles or seeking confirmation. Which one is it? It's like, it's, it could be both, and it could be one or the other at times, depending upon the situation. So let me just give you an example. When it comes to marriage, should I marry this person? Well, that is such a, that you could throw anybody in front of you and say, should I marry that person? And then you're like, God, are you going to tell me? Well, here you can weed out a ton of people just by going to Corinthians and seeing where Paul instructs us not to be unequally yoked, just like I mentioned a few minutes ago. So if you know that God says, do not marry an unbeliever, it's not going to be easy for you. If you're marrying with somebody who's not equally yoked, going in a different direction, and does not have the same values as you, so you're going to set yourself up for a difficult time. And some people will do that because they just want it so bad. But you will eliminate a lot of candidates right away. Don't need confirmation or anything if that person's not a Christian. So the Bible does speak on those things. Now, God's not going to say, marry that guy right there, right there. It's like, if he's a Christian man and he's a good man and he has a good reputation and you don't see any red flags, then keep moving forward with that relationship. If you love him, if you love him, if you're like, I'm not in love, should I marry him? Okay, well, no. Do you need confirmation on that? So I think that there are some things in the Bible that just weed out a whole lot of options right away when we look at what the Bible tells us. Again, should I be friends with that person? Proverbs is full of advice on how to have a good friendship. So put those principles into practice for greater success. But the not so easy issues are wisdom issues. Should I go to this college? Should I choose that career? Should I buy this car? Those things require wisdom, but that doesn't mean that God does not speak into those issues. For example, like when my husband and I were debating whether or not we should move out of California, that was really hard. I wanted confirmation on that decision because it was a big move. Was born there, raised there, and I really didn't want to move. I mean, when it came down to it, I would have lived and died in my house because I loved raising my boys in that home. Me and my husband built that home together when we got married. So we dreamed together, we built together, and we worked hard for that. And then we left it. Why did we leave it? Because of our family, because of our kids. But that was not a quick decision. There's nothing in the Bible that will tell you, hey, pack up your family under this, and that condition, and then leave that state. That there's nothing in the Bible that specifically says that. So it wasn't a quick decision. And I think that impatience and haste, if we get hasty, is where some people go wrong with these decisions. Oh, I didn't get confirmation, so I'll never make a decision. I'll never move forward in that. And I don't think that sometimes God says, if you step out in faith, then I'll give you the guidance. So sometimes it's a step in the direction saying, God, I'm going to take this step. If I'm going in the wrong way, reroute me. God's faithful to do that. But I don't know that, you know, exactly what to do right now. And then at the same time, you can have people who are, I just really want to know now, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it. And sometimes it requires waiting until you're at peace with that decision. Like, okay, I'm going to do it. When we got ready to move out of California, I knew that we needed to move because I have 3 boys, and I knew that for the good of our family, we needed to go to another place that was more in line with our values, because it wasn't good to continue raising our family there. And so for us, it was the right thing to do. And it was a decision bathed in prayer, constantly discussed, lots of research put into it. Again, my husband and I were gathering and acquiring wisdom, looking at other people who had left and moved before and what they suggested, what they said. So it wasn't a quick decision. It took time and effort and really praying and going before the Lord and lots of tears. Sometimes decisions are hard. Sometimes things are difficult to make the decisions and then be like, even though you know it's the right thing to do, just because it hurts doesn't mean it's the wrong thing to do. So there's a lot more to this than me just saying, yeah, go ahead and look it up in the Bible. And there's a lot more that goes into some decisions than just a quick answer. Sometimes it takes us following the biblical principles, praying about it, gathering wisdom, researching, still laying it out before the Lord and saying, God, I'm going to trust you in this, because that is called having a relationship with God. Sometimes it's just, I'm going to do it and I'm going to trust you because I'm not getting a no on this. And I feel like it's the right thing to do. And all I know to do right now is to continue moving forward and then trusting that the Lord's going to be with you. And so, a lot of it is up to you and your relationship with the Lord if it's not something that the Bible specifically speaks on. But there is a good book on this topic called Discerning the Will of God, and it's a thick book. It's long, so prepare yourself. But the author talks about how some things are not necessarily right or wrong in life unless you feel called to go to one college over the other. Like if God's calling you there and you're like, I know I need to go there, then okay, pick that one. But it may not be a sin to pick the college that you want to go to. If you were accepted into that college and accepted into another one, you're like, but I really wanted this one. And the door opened for two. Okay, then go to the one that you want after you've been praying about it and you don't feel like you need to go to the other one. If God wanted you to really go to the one that you didn't want to go to, you would eventually become okay with that, and you'll come to a place of peace. But the good news about all of that is that the Lord works it all together for good for us as we do his will. So unless you feel called, to go to something specific or do something that God wants you to do, some things aren't necessarily wrong. So yes, be in the word always, pray always, seek the Lord, seek wise counsel, and God will hold up his end of the bargain and be faithful because he can't deny who he is. The last question is this: my family members who are not Christians frequently disregard the boundaries my husband and I have set regarding the movies that are, whether or not movies are appropriate for our young kids to see. We let our children stay with these family members sometimes and are not sure how to tactfully handle the conversation that needs to be had. Any advice? Well, here's my question. If you set boundaries already, why are they pushing the boundaries? They're already disrespecting you as the parent. Like if you set boundaries in place and they know what they are, then I'd be like, why aren't you guys listening to me? So let me start by saying this: a child's worldview begins to develop by the age of 18 months old, and it's fully formed by the time he or she is 13. So the worldview is formed through their experiences and their environment, and that includes relationships and entertainment and all the things that they are exposed to, and they filter through the mind. So if your child's under the age of 13, their worldview is being developed, and these people may play a small role in that, but you still have to be careful what your kids are confronted with, right? What's being put into their mind. So you're putting your children into the care of unsaved family members who do not share the same worldview as you. That means they won't share the same values, and if they disregard your boundaries, then they don't care about your judgment. They think that their judgment is better than yours. So if it were me, I would ask myself if it's worth it to send my kids over there. So we're talking about young, impressionable kids. So if you're either here's what it comes down to. You're either going to have a conversation with them, and it's going to be uncomfortable, I'm sure, or you're going to keep sending them over there and just, knowing full well that they don't care about your boundaries, and your kids could be exposed to things that you don't want them to be exposed to. Which one are you going to sacrifice? The discomfort of having that conversation, or what your kids might see through the movie selection of these people that are babysitting them? Which one has long-term effects? That's really what it comes down to. Am I going to have this uncomfortable conversation, or am I going to keep sending my kids over there knowing that they could be exposed to things? Which one is worse for you? And I think we shouldn't sacrifice our kids. We should sacrifice our discomfort, right? We should just sacrifice our comfort. So now I would think when you go to have a conversation like this, and I'll be honest, I like to avoid conflict, so I probably wouldn't let them watch my kids, and I'd just be like, let's not discuss it, but you're not watching my kid anymore unless I'm over there, right? Problem solved. But if you want them to watch your kids, then say something like, hey, can I ask you something? Can we have a conversation? And I don't want to be any way towards you. I really appreciate that you love watching little Bobby and he loves coming over to your house. And I love that we have this kind of relationship, but I don't allow little Bobby to watch PG-13 movies with violence and sex scenes, right? I mean, he's young and impressionable, and we want to protect him from those things until he's old enough to understand how to process it. So I appreciate you being willing to watch him, and I love that you love him, and I love your relationship. But I just want to make sure that we're a team here and that you understand where I'm coming from so that he can keep coming over here because I know that he loves you and that you guys love him. And, you know, are you okay with honoring our values when it comes to movies and entertainment? Like for his sake, is that something that we can all be on the same page about? And then see what they say. And if they agree, then great. And then monitor that going forward. Um, but if they don't, then they don't value the relationship enough, or even, the relationship they have with your child to protect him or her from the kinds of things that you're trying to protect them from. And to me, that would be a deal breaker. That's unacceptable because I'm not willing to sacrifice my child and what they could be exposed to over having an uncomfortable conversation for the sake of my relationship with the family members. The family members have to understand where you're coming from and to be respectful. I know for me, my kids aren't married, they don't have kids or anything like that yet. But if my kids came to me and said, "Hey, mom, when you watch my kids, they can't watch this or that," then okay, done and done. I would respect even my own kids' wishes. So that's just something that you're going to have a conversation about. All right. So next we're going to look at a reel, and I'm going to react to it. But the question here is, are these parents controlling their kids?
These Christian parents control their children's lives.
Satan wants to devour our kids, so it's my job to not let him do that.
They have no locks on the doors. The parents think that they have the right to control everything in their children's lives. They tell them what music they should listen to, control the TV, and know all their children's internet passwords. Is it right or not?
They're doing what parents should do. They're giving their kids boundaries. He calls it controlling. These Christian parents are controlling everything. Is monitoring controlling? Is saying I have to have your passwords on your phone controlling? Especially in the culture that we live in where pornography is accessible at the fingertips of your child. I mean, is keeping locks off of doors controlling? I've told my boys since birth, like, hey, your room is not private. Like, you can't lock me out of that. I can come in anytime I want to check anything I want. That was before they paid rent. Now that they're older and they pay rent, then they have privacy for certain things, and they can lock their doors and things like that. But they had to become adults and pay rent in order to do that. They had privacy for certain things, but there was no, this room is private and off limits at the age of 13 and you can't come in here. No. But now, they're older and they pay rent, two of them anyways, and they have their own locks and they have less monitoring. But while they're growing up and they're learning how to navigate this life and they're learning how to navigate the phones and social media, then yeah, parents need to set boundaries and check in and have accountability for their child. And it's going to help their child know that their parents still care about them. I've heard some parents letting their child 13 years old, middle school now, okay, go party, go have fun. And they no longer have to check in or have curfews. That's dangerous. It's dangerous. And even my 14-year-old doesn't go to bed with his phone in his hand, no social media. It's called parenting in the 21st century. All right, so that is it for this video. I hope that you guys gathered some insight. And if you have any questions for me, you can send in your questions to hello@shandafulbright.com. We'll be sure to compile them and put them into a queue for the next lineup. And again, you can check out my podcast at Her Faith Inspires Podcast, and I'll catch you on the next one.